Hey, everybody, I'm Scott Wikle. You're listening to My Kind of Country. Thanks for joining me on a Monday night. It's always one of my very favorite subjects to talk about, the Bakersfield Sound. And tonight I have two sisters who have put together a beautiful documentary on the music that came out of Bakersfield. And they were also the people that got Merle's boxcar to the museum. And they've done so much for Bakersfield and country music history, and it's a pleasure to have them both on the show tonight. This is Sharman and Glenda Rankin. Ladies, how are you tonight?
Doing great, Scott. Thanks for visiting with us. We appreciate it.
Well, it's an honor to have you both on the show, and I want to thank you so much for everything that you've done for Bakersfield and the Bakersfield Sound and preserving all this history and music.
Well, it is just something that has been long overdue in our town, and it's wonderful to see the Bakersfield Sound musicians being highlighted and honored for their contributions to the history of country music.
Well, Glenda, give me a little bit of the background of you and Di, of the work that you've done, and how you really became interested in the Bakersfield Sound.
Well, long ago, we have a wonderful museum, Kern County Museum, and it's an outdoor museum. Prior to working on this project, we were able to get our mom's little Victorian home moved to the museum. And once we finished that project, our friend Dale Houston said the house you really need to move is Merle Haggard's house, his boxcar. And we just think we kind of lost our minds there for a moment and decided that was something that we would be very interested in doing, to try to preserve the history of the Bakersfield Sound. So then we proceeded, and it took us about 3 years that we got our nonprofit status so that we could do this project, and that was in 2012. And then 2015, we actually moved the boxcar. We were in charge of getting the boxcar and moving it to the museum, and Merle followed the boxcar in his bus all the way from the little place on Yosemite where his family home was located, followed the truck with the boxcar on it, and it was a very special day. So we were very excited to be able to be involved in this. And then after that, we had to replace the boxcar with a home for Stephen Himes, and I think it was a very emotional day for him because he had a tear in his eye when he saw that boxcar being loaded up, but I think he was happy to contribute to the whole process of saving Merle's home. When we first met Merle, we said that we wanted to honor him by moving the boxcar to the Kern County Museum. And he just looked at us and kind of shook his head and said, "Ladies, it's not honoring me, it's honoring my dad, who built the boxcar home, and my mom, who turned that house into a home."
And now you have just finished up a beautiful documentary that's going to premiere Sunday, August 22nd, at the Bakersfield Fox Theater at 2 p.m. And folks, you can go to thebakersfieldfox.com and get tickets for that. We'll have that information on our Facebook page for My Kind of Country. And Di, tell me a little more about the making of this documentary and how it all came together.
Oh, Scott, it's so funny. It all came together because of the Boxcar Project. We invited about 10 of the early musicians out to what used to be the Rainbow Gardens. It's now our Bass Club in Bakersfield. And while we were there, we just told them, what you have done made it possible for Buck and Merle to take our music to the world, and that we wanted to do something to honor them, because there were and are so many talented musicians that have come out of Bakersfield. And so we thought about what it might be that we would do, because we did get that boxcar out there, and it just seemed that when we talked with Jimmy Phillips and Tommy Hayes and Larry Petrie,
they just had such interesting stories to tell us. So we decided what better way to honor them than to do a video documentary about the stories that they have told, and thinking that it would just be maybe a little 30-minute video clip and that would be all. However, in meeting the three of them, we continued to meet more and more of the early musicians as well as their family members who just had such wonderful stories to tell about their dads and their moms. And so that's kind of how it got started. And Glenn, you want to tell about Chuck and what he's done for us over the years?
Okay, we met years ago. We met Chuck Barbie, who was a retired filmmaker in Southern California, and he's done some other work for us. And so when we started in on the documentary, as Di was saying, we thought it would just be a little short version of the stories that the three main musicians that we had met, and it just continued to get bigger and bigger, and Chuck was so excited about the entire project. He just went right to work, and we ended up interviewing about 68 people, and that was musicians and their family members and other music enthusiasts that knew a lot about the Bakersfield Sound. And Scott Wikle was one of the key historians that we met along the way, and he had just come out with his box set on the Bakersfield Sound, and that just got everybody enthused with the project. And we went to the Crystal Palace, Buck Owens' Crystal Palace there in Bakersfield, and helped him kick his project off, and he has helped us so much along the way. Any questions, any historical questions that we had, we knew who to go to. It was just an exciting project to hear all their stories about the majority of their families came out to California during the Dust Bowl days, and to hear the work ethic that these people had, and then the music just kind of developed out of something to do in the evenings, and on Saturday nights they would have their dances in their barns, and then that just developed into something that people enjoyed, and they found out that they could make more money in the honky-tonks than they could working out in the fields. So it was really, really touching to hear their stories and the emotion that went into their music.
Absolutely.
And we just love the fact that our county has such history with the Dust Bowl days. And, as those people came, they came with basically the clothes on their back and what few little items they could bring. And Jimmy Phillips was one of the local musicians who actually lived in the labor camp there in Arvin, and he was able to share with us at the beginning of our video. We wanted to emphasize the fact that these people came to California looking for a better life. And as Glenda said, they had that hard work ethic, and they had their music, and they had their faith. They had faith as they moved out here that they would be able to build a better life for their families and their children, and it just is amazing. Red Simpson also lived in the same labor camp, and a good friend of Red's, Ray Rush, who was the co-writer for Highway Patrol, wrote a song about Leo B. Hart, who was the superintendent of schools, and he saw that these little kids, these little Okie kids that had come here were being kind of mistreated, and there was a prejudice against them in the local schools, and he took it upon himself to build a school with the help of the parents, the kids, and everyone that he could talk to about getting it done, to give these kids a sense of self-respect. And it is just a beautiful story and a beautiful song that Ray Rush wrote and then Red Simpson recorded. So that's kind of the way we kick off the early music that came out of Bakersfield, because it truly did start right there in that labor camp and many other labor camps up and down the Central Valley, because we know our music as the Bakersfield Sound, but it truly was the California sound. Up and down the Central Valley, there were little honky-tonks, and the musicians would travel, go up to Fresno, Visalia, Porterville, play up there. Then those people would come to Bakersfield, and so it was like a true family. They helped each other out, and they just made a sound like no other. I think when Rick Reno Stevens, one of the musicians in Johnny Owen's Buck Fever Band, and they played tribute music too, of course, Buck, Johnny's dad, but he just said, lots of places had country music. Nashville was a country music business. It was just going on. It was so strong then, and then all of a sudden they hear about this little town, Bakersfield, and then, of course, the two big stars that came out, Buck and Merle. But we researched, and we found out musicians we'd never even heard of before. Tex Butler had never heard that name, and come to find out, he was actually the band leader at the Blackboard before Bill Woods took over. And Tex was offered a job in Hollywood, so he talked with the owner of the Blackboard, and they said, well, we've got to find somebody to replace you. And they interviewed a lot of different people, Buck Owens being one, Bill Woods being one. And after looking at all the total picture, Tex said, Bill Woods is the one I'd like to replace me. And so, as they say, the rest is history. Anyone that knows anything about the Bakersfield Sound knows that Bill Woods was the father of that sound.
Well, the title that you named this documentary says it really the best. It's called Treble and Twang, the music that came out of Bakersfield, and that's really the two things that most people will identify the Bakersfield Sound with, is treble and twang.
You bet they will, sure. One other person, Scott, that we met that has become just such a very, very dear friend and almost a mother figure is Lillian Haggard Ray. And she just told us so many stories about Merle and his travels, and the best story and the thing that was her favorite thing was that Merle, in the middle of the night, sometimes 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, he would call her up and he'd say, "Sis, listen to this. I've got a new idea for a song. I need you to listen to it and tell me what you think." And she said that's the one thing that she misses the most is those early morning calls from Merle.
Beautiful story, and I just am looking forward to seeing this beautiful documentary. And you're going to do a premiere at the Fox Theater there in Bakersfield on Sunday, August 22nd. Tell me a little more about what folks can expect for this.
Well, as they arrive, I would definitely recommend getting there by 1 o'clock. The doors will open at 1, and as they come in, we'll be, for the first hour as people are arriving, we'll just have some old vintage photos on the screen along with some of our dear friends in Bakersfield that have helped to sponsor this. They've done so much to help us to get this historic and nonprofit video out to the public. And once the video starts, you are going to hear the stories of those early musicians. As I said, Butler, Bud Hobbs, he was a wonderful musician in Bakersfield. He actually had Bill Woods, Buck Owens, Jelly Sanders, and Oscar Whittington playing for him on his song Louisiana Swing. And he calls out Billy Woods from Bakersfield and all their names, Buck Owens, and it just is the kind of music that you can't sit still to. And
you got to tap your toe when you hear that music, for sure.
That's for sure.
One of the men that we interviewed was Lawton Giles, who was the band leader for Buck in the very early days. And he was definitely one that said, you have to get up and dance. That's what it was all about in those early days. They had dance halls as well as honky-tonks. Norm Hamlet has shared when he was just a teenager that he played in the Visalia area, and that they would sometimes have 1,000 to 1,500 people in these huge dance halls. And it just makes me want to be able to go back in time and see what went on.
Your organization is called Citizens Preserving History, and then Barbie Film and Video Productions are the folks that put this all together for you. And the BakersfieldFox.com is the website, and you can go and get your tickets. They're only $10, folks, and make sure you get a chance to go see this beautiful documentary. Are you going to have this documentary available for people to purchase as well?
Well, Scott, we are a nonprofit, and yes, we are going to have the DVD available for a donation to our nonprofit, which will help to pay for the 4 years that we've worked on this documentary. Do you know, we have our Facebook page, Citizens Preserving History, but we also have cphinfo.org. And we have one other thing that we do want to share. We want to invite all y'all to come out to Bakersfield and see our Kern County Museum that houses the boxcar, but they are also in the midst of refurbishing a building that the Bakersfield Country Music Museum moved out to our Kern County Museum back in the 80s, and it has not been used for the artifacts yet. It is going to be rededicated to the musicians that made the music in Bakersfield, and that will be opened up in September. So with the Crystal Palace that I'm sure is going to be opening up soon, and our Kern County Museum, and we still have a couple of little honky-tonks out there. You can go out to Ethel's Corral, and we have Monte Carlo. Yes. So there are a few places you can go and hear that true country music from Bakersfield.
Well, ladies, thank you so much for everything that you have done on behalf of someone who has been a lifelong fan of the Bakersfield Sound. Glenda Rankin and Di Sharman, thank you so much for being on My Kind of Country.
You're welcome, Scott. Thank you for having us.